Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for April 28th through May 4th, 2025. So we are about to go from April to May, which for me just seems a little bit bonkers. How do we get here? May means that we are really starting to get towards the middle of the year, and as promised, 2025 certainly has been an interesting year, and it's something that I spoke about at length before the year in my yearly webinar. That 2025 was an important year because we were seeing so many of the outer planets change signs. So it's like looking at a clock and seeing hands on the clock change signs that haven't changed for years, and in some cases, like Pluto, haven't changed signs in 16 years. But as we go into May, we do have another planet changing signs. Pluto is now in Aquarius, Neptune is now in Aries, and by May 24th, Saturn will go into Aries. So that's a little bit further down the road, but it's just to put it on your radar. But for those that are watching live, as always, say hello. Where are you listening from? I know that we are across the world. We are. I know some of you are my Tuesday Club, for example. And for those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium presently located in the rolling hills of Central Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology, and you hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. And just as a little side note, because it's something that comes up with clients, don't forget that the 50% that is you is something that is conscious, subconscious, unconscious. And our work is to move more from the unconscious to the conscious. Well, maybe that's another topic for another time. So as I record this, we have just had a Taurus new moon. This Taurus new moon was yesterday, April 27th at 7 degrees of Taurus. This new moon takes us out of a lunar month that was marked by a solar eclipse. This is the solar eclipse in Aries at 9 degrees of Aries, and it's like the page turns, but at the same time, this new lunar month, even though it changes the focus, it's still part of a story that will unfold for the next, in this case, next 5 months, 6 months. That's the length of time from eclipse to eclipse. So what is astrology? You've heard me say it a lot of times at this point. Astrology is time and the energy of time. And my work as an astrologer, it's not to bring out my crystal ball and sort of divine what these things mean. It's to look at the engineering of time, the engineering of the energy of time. Astrology is a symbolic system. It's not to say that Pluto or Mars or this or that is doing anything to you. It is a way of narrating or accessing these ones and zeros, so to speak, of creation. So when we have a solar eclipse, I'm going to go back to that solar eclipse on March 29th. It opens up a container of time, like a structure. You just can't see it. And then we have all the successive new and full moons within that container. And that takes us to, in this case, the next solar eclipse, and this will be on September 21st of 2025. So the page has now turned. As of, like I said yesterday, we have the Taurus new moon. So what can we expect with this new, let's say, container within a container? And that container, what's Taurus? Actually, and I'm saying this as a Scorpio, I love Taurus. Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac. It takes the fire and the motivation and the sparks of Aries and it brings it into physical reality. What do I mean by that? Life doesn't start with just earth, physical. Even though my role as an astrologer is to deal with, I should phrase it a little bit differently, it's not to deal with per se, it's to help people navigate their earth problems. Katie, when is it going to happen? What should I be when I grow up? How much money am I going to make? I don't know. But we have to always remember that the first element in astrology is fire. First, it has to be a desire, a spark, an idea, something that really inspires and motivates us, and so it can become earth. So when we get to Taurus season, in theory, we've been very revved up. By Aries season, we have the fire, we have the motivation. Okay, so now what does it become? Taurus is the body, so to speak, to that sort of first breath of Aries. It is the spark, or it is the energy that then impregnates and fertilizes the soils of Taurus. I know that astrology is very northern hemisphere biased, and I realize we are a cross hemisphere audience. But in astrology, Taurus represents spring. It takes, again, the first of spring and it creates flowers. Right now, the trees are in bloom, there's flowers everywhere, and that sort of talks about the fertility of Taurus as an earth sign. And it's no coincidence that the ancients, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, celebrated the 1st of May, or around that time, as sort of this rebirth of life, with May Day and the Maypole and Beltane around that time. So Taurus Taurus new moon says that over the next 4 weeks, it is to come back to life. It is to experience the pleasures, the flowers, the beauty, regardless of what part of the world we're in or what the weather is, of course. And it is to come back to our physical life. We all have a roof over our head, I hope. I realize that's not the case for everybody, because Taurus gets into our basic needs as human beings: shelter, food, some sort of resource and exchange. And so Taurus is about money. It is about income, but it's also about how we invest our time and our money, our love. Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is the planet of many things, but it is also the planet of love. So it is a season to invest in the things that we love, the things that we want to see grow, the seeds that we have planted that we want to nourish with our love, so that they can bloom into something. But on a very practical level, it is to shore up our lives. It is to gather resources. It's to stock the pantry. It is to sort of take note of what you have and what you need, and hopefully what you can get or even receive. Taurus is very much about the receptivity of life. And so this Taurus season, we have up until the 30th. So this week, April 30th, we have Venus in Pisces. So this Taurus new moon, it brought the energy of the new moon over Pisces, which is actually kind of an interesting combination. First, because Venus is exalted in Pisces. And I know this is a little bit of a technical a point, but it's an important point, because it really, if you want to talk about the structure and engineering of time, that there are some signs where the planets have more strength, they have more quote-unquote dignity, and they also have the opposite. So in classical astrology, it's not arbitrary. It says that that Venus is exalted in Pisces. And so that talks about the physicalities and the pleasures of life of Venus, but it also talks about how Taurus is at its best, or Venus is at its best, when it gets to share, when it's in the flow of life, where it is in the acts of altruism and goodness, so to speak. And so it's a high bar. I think Pisces, in its highest of its high, is a very high bar for all of us as human beings to reach. But I hope that with this Taurus new moon, it does inspire acts of generosity, of unconditional love, or to be of service. Pisces is one of the signs of service, but not expecting anything in return. That's the thing about the physical and the material. It can be very transactional. Pisces, in theory, is not a transactional sign. So this is an energy that's with us over the next 4 weeks. Venus, at the time of the new moon, was conjunct Saturn, was conjunct the North Node. This new moon isn't an eclipse, but we need to sort of circle that Venus conjunct the North Node, because to have a planet on a node can inspire eclipse-like energy. It may say, especially if you have planets on or near 7-8 degrees of the fixed signs. The fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, that this coming 4 weeks might be some sort of a turning point. We will see. Venus conjunct Saturn is to make some sort of commitment to see things for as they really are. The irony is that Pisces, by its nature, is very ethereal. It has a different currency and a different standard than typically Taurus does. What you invest in, of course, we need to pay the bills, we need to keep the lights on, but with Pisces and Saturn in Pisces, it says don't forget about the, sort of not to think ahead, but to feel into what you truly are investing in your life. Is it of meaning and purpose? Because ultimately, Pisces, ruled by Jupiter, is to find meaning and purpose in our lives. Like I said, it's a very high bar. The other thing about this new moon that makes it a little bit quote-unquote interesting is that it picks up on the Mars-Pluto opposition. So this was the Mars-Pluto opposition that we saw this weekend on April 26th, the last Mars-Pluto opposition in a series of 3, but a very, very powerful energy, especially because the energy is in fixed. Mars is in Leo, Pluto is in Aquarius, and fixed signs typically talk about our material reality, our physical world. We have Pluto in Aquarius, and it's the start of a 20-year journey for Pluto in Aquarius. But we're in the early parts of a story where it's really looking and in some cases transforming or even tearing down old systems. Aquarius is systems. It's typically systems of information, systems of energy, systems of movement. It's community, it's social issues, it's society, it's humanity, it's the internet. But this is a good example with the internet of where Aquarius is the sort of the digital part of the internet. It is the sort of circulation of information and ideas. But in reality, the internet has a physical infrastructure. And without the physicality, and that's Capricorn, the other sign that's ruled by Saturn, there would be no internet. So we might see by extension with Pluto and Aquarius that the physicality of our systems, the networks, the infrastructure also is in some sort of change and transformation. So Pluto's in Aquarius. We have Mars at this moment over in Leo. And so these two planets facing off, even though the exact opposition was the 26th, with the new moon brings the energy into the next 4 weeks. Remember I said engineering and construction of time. So that new moon is in what's called a T-square. So if you can visualize a triangle in your head with 90-degree angles and 180-degree opposition at the base, we have Pluto, we have Mars, and then we have the moon and the sun at the tip of the triangle. So the sun and the moon are in a really tight T-square with Pluto and Mars. And it says that over the next 4 weeks, there is a really intense energy for reformation and transformation. That could be collective, that could be personal. If we're just looking at the personal, then the question is, what needs to reform and change in your life? What needs to clear out? We may find that just simply you just want to clean out the closets, you want to clean out the cabinets, you want to make space so that new systems and new organizations can come into your life. Or you realize, Taurus, that you've been holding on to a lot of things. Taurus typically, as an energy, I'm not talking about as a sign, and when it's not moving, when it's blocked, it hoards. So maybe we need to look at what we've been hoarding on to. It could be emotional. It could be spiritual. So it's a bit of an intense energy, if I'm being completely honest, but you can use it constructively and positively to really clear some physical space in your life, or clear some emotional space in your life. But that said, I love a Taurus moon, Taurus new moon. I'm saying this as a Scorpio because Scorpio is the decay of life and Taurus is the rebirth of life. And one of my closest friends is a Taurus, and I'm like, get very intense and scorpionic, and she's just like, let's just relax, watch some television. Maybe there's some medicine in that. We can kind of use a little bit of some pleasure and some reassurance during this time. So Taurus new moon takes us into this week. We also, speaking of Pluto, we have Pluto turning retrograde. It turns retrograde on May 4th. So Pluto is something just to look at this week. And I'm sort of saying this with my eye on what's happening with the power outage in Europe, because again, systems and networks, but we're only a couple years, give or take, which is kind of crazy to think about it. We're only a couple of years of Pluto into Aquarius. I say that's crazy because now that I've realized that Pluto first went into Aquarius in March of 2023, it's an energy that we're still, bringing into our consciousness, starting to really feel out what its role is personally and collectively at this point. So Pluto turning retrograde says this week and next week is a week where we may see what Pluto is starting to change and reform and transform in our life now that it's in Aquarius. If you are a Taurus, a Leo, a Scorpio, or an Aquarius, take more note than usual, because this is having more of an impact on those signs. So Pluto will turn retrograde at 3 degrees of Aquarius, and it sort of saturates the collective and also our personal lives with that energy. Pluto, like all the outer planets, it spends about 5 months out of the year retrograde. It's not like, oh my God, Pluto's retrograde, what's going to happen? No, like all planets turn retrograde except for the sun and the moon. So it's just part of this pulling back and integrating of Pluto's psychic and spiritual experience while Pluto is in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius turning retrograde, and then we also, I said this earlier, Venus goes into Aries. So that's something to also take note of, because Venus rules Taurus season. So we started the season with Venus in Pisces. Venus has been in and out of Pisces and Aries since the beginning of the year. Venus was retrograde. Venus first went into Pisces. I think it was first went into Aries the start of January. So Venus is now returning to the sign of where it started its retrograde on March 1st. And it started its retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries. So on April 30th, Venus returns to Aries, and it brings the energy of Taurus season now towards Aries. Aries is Taurus's 12th sign. So Venus on some level is still behind the sun, still hanging out behind the scenes. But it may mean, especially with that Taurus new moon energy, and especially with Mars opposite Pluto, Mars is still opposite Pluto even into the beginning of May, that we have something that we need to release that we have been holding on to. The 12th is typically a space of letting go of attachments. Kind of ironic, because Taurus is typically where we attach. We hold on to things, we create resource, we collect, we gather, we hoard. But it also may mean that this is a time where with Venus and Aries, it is to let go of something, to detach, to not be so focused on the physical, but also to create emotional and psychic space for new beginnings. Venus in Aries also means that Venus is now in the sign of where we had a solar eclipse on March 29th. So Venus will invigorate the energies of that eclipse. And when Venus gets to about 9-10 degrees in the middle of May, it's just to take note of, do we see eclipse energy at that time? That said, Venus, even though it's not in its exaltation in Pisces, it's actually technically in its detriment. But this is just a Venus that is not as quick to negotiate. It's a little bit more self-minded. It fights for what it wants. It fights for what it believes in. It's an advocate. Of course, it will still negotiate. But Venus in Aries is a little bit spicier than Venus in Pisces. So that said, those are our big focus points for this week. When we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, we'll look at the Taurus new moon, we'll look at where this Pluto and Mars business is happening. And before I do that, I should also mention that I'm doing a free webinar next week, next May 7th. This will be a hour-long presentation on energetic sciences, which is the study or the look at energy, both physical and subtle energy, and consciousness, and the energy of consciousness. And we will also learn about the weft, which is the sixth element, and the sixth element is the support for life and communication, and it acts as like the invisible threads or the invisible fabric of reality. And so how does astrology work? Perhaps it's the planets that are moving the weft. But the more that we can learn about these subtle energies and the energy of consciousness, the more that we can shift our realities and even shift our relationships with the archetypes of the planets. So just saying that from the perspective of an astrologer, but the link is in the show notes, or you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. We will do about a 10-minute meditation and practice at the end of the presentation. Overall, it'll be about 1 hour, and it will be recorded for replay for those that can't make it live. So 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on May 7th, so next Wednesday. And this is the introduction because I will be doing another weekend intensive the last weekend of May 31st through June 1st. So we will learn more about energy and the energy of consciousness. Having said that, let's look at each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet, and Mars is currently in a really tight face-off with Pluto. And while the exact opposition was the 26th, so a few days ago, it's really with you throughout a lot of May. And to be fair, this has been with you off and on since even the end of 2024. So this sort of represents you coming to the end of a lot of work. We've been talking about this, but just to sort of piece it out, because in astrology, there are no absolutes. There's just energy, and then there's you. So it's to listen for how this is relevant in your life. Where is the story? Mars, it is sort of your ambassador. It moves through each of the 12 zodiac signs. It takes 2 years to do so. And so it'll pull your energy to different signs throughout different points throughout the year. When Mars makes a difficult, and I'm just being honest for a moment, Pluto, Mars opposite Pluto is a bit difficult, but it just asks you to really look at yourself, to look at your power, your control, how you use your power, your relationship with anger, or how you move forward, or even desire. And again, this has really been unfolding even over the last 6 months. So here you are, and the idea is that Pluto has revealed something to you. It's shown you something. I was having a conversation with a friend. She's not an Aries, but it really sort of gave me like a real world example of this energy. She said this weekend, she just had this rage, and even she said to her family, like, I have this rage, and the family like, where's this coming from? Because it was very much unlike her. Pluto pulls things out of us. So I'm just saying that, in case you're like, why do I feel this way? What's happening, Katie? I don't know, but maybe Pluto is talking to you. What needs to reform and transform? Whatever is happening right now is not an old story, or sorry, not a new story. It's really been with you for a while at this point. And this Mars-Pluto opposition is happening between Leo, which represents your ability to, what lights you up, what gives you joy, what gives you passion. Do you know who you are? How do you individuate? How do you express yourself? Versus this other energy, Pluto in the 11th, And so maybe you're really looking at this larger dynamic about yourself and the world and how you show up with the world and even how you share your talents, your gifts, and your abilities. Pluto is more like an external force, and maybe you're feeling with the world as it is, or maybe even something that's going on in your life. It's really pushing you to either express yourself or be more yourself or to share your talents, gifts, and abilities. Again, it's for you to see how this is relevant in your life. Now, Taurus is your money sign, money, income, material stability, and security. So this could literally be about money, property, and assets over the next 4 weeks, and about you and what you want versus larger forces beyond you. It could be about self-worth and value, how you take yourself and take yourself seriously or take your talent seriously. How does the world take you seriously? Does it take you seriously at all? But this new moon, it picks up on two of your major rulers, Venus and Mars. And so this could be a month where things are changing, rearranging, and just to add in Aries, because Saturn is coming to the end of its time in Pisces. So this has just been like 2.5 years of really doing a lot of internal work and releasing and letting go. And a lot of the things that are even happening right now with the Mars-Pluto opposition, it is to create space for the new beginnings that will start to take shape and form when Saturn goes into Aries, June and July and August of this year. Taurus, happy birthday, Taurus. You just had a Taurus new moon. So if your birthday was, what was this weekend? If your birthday was the 27th, plus or minus a couple of days, it means that the next year of your life is a time of powerful new beginnings. Taurus, you're in a little bit of a pinch point. It really depends on the Taurus or even Taurus rising, because you've got one of your rulers, Mars, it's a relationship planet, in this intense opposition with Pluto. So something is happening, and it's going to be different for every Taurus or Taurus rising. And I would lean this more towards a Taurus sun, but it will be different for everybody that's listening. So you've been undergoing some sort of like evolutionary push even since the end of last year to change something about relationships. Either that literally means to change a relationship or to change a major partnership or to change how you show up or how you interact and socialize. But there is, with Mars opposite Pluto, it may be bringing something up for you. I was talking to a Taurus friend this weekend who said over the weekend she just had a lot of rage coming out. She's like, I don't know where this is, but that's the thing about Mars opposite Pluto, is that it brings something that may have always been deep down inside. And nevertheless, regardless of when your birthday is, or even if you're Taurus rising, this is the reboot and restart for your personal year, a new moon. But this is a new moon that says in order to have new beginnings, something old has to clear. You do have Pluto, although this is a much bigger topic, now in your 10th after the last 2 years. It'll be there for 20 years. So something about either your professional life, the role that you play in the world, your relationship with duties and responsibilities is also caught up in the mix as well. But this is all, with Venus, your planet, because you're ruled by Venus. Venus is going to go into Aries this week, and so it will go back into a sign that it was in. I think it was the beginning of January and all the way into the end of March. So Venus and Aries for you, on some level, the work now, the focus now of your personal astrology is internal, it's psychic, it's in a spiritual space, because Aries is something called your 12th sign. So whatever is coming up, whatever new beginnings are really beginning to reveal themselves, it also says that something has to clear, or you need to get very clear about your future, the path that you want to take, because Venus was conjunct Saturn at the time of that new moon. But it's not until the beginning of June, June 6th, that Venus will go into Taurus. So there's a lot of existential terrain to cover between now and June 6th. Make that productive, get quiet with yourself, meditate, reflect, clean things out, let go of attachments or addictions, and anything to really open up a space within to talk about these newer beginnings as you go into June. Gemini, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is still in Aries. So Aries for you is something called your 11th sign. This is a time when you're looking towards the future. You're planning, you're strategizing, you're thinking about the road ahead, you're having hopes and dreams for the future. But also Mercury is in a space that talks about community, friends, your social network, and perhaps even social issues and causes. While Mercury will generally breeze through, I'm looking at my calendar, it will breeze through Aries. It will be in Taurus by May 10th, so that's 2 weeks from now. This is a time for you to connect with community and connect with friends. And don't forget, that's where you had a solar eclipse on March 29th. So this is an area that just by the nature of the eclipse is a big focal point for the next 6 months. This Taurus new moon, this Taurus is something called your 12th sign. So this is the new moon that precedes your season, Gemini season. And it says that this is a time for you to go within, for you to reflect, to look at the past year, again with Mercury in Aries, to hope and dream for the next year and the next future. But it is to take it slow. The irony is that Venus will go into not irony, sorry, I got confused for a second. Venus will go into Aries, so it's a little bit of a social time. At the same time, you need to rest and reflect and to go within. You're not feeling the intensities of the Mars-Pluto opposition like you did with the other signs, but I would say, especially while Mercury is in Aries for the next 2 weeks, some of the push and pull that's happening is around community, is around service, is around helping people, or even to see, are you and your friends, are you and your social network, are you on the same page? Pluto and Mars may be exposing something, it may be getting into deeper issues and themes. And then Taurus season for you is to release something, and perhaps even to release people that no longer are in alignment with you. Cancer, so the moon is your planet. We just had a Taurus new moon. So for you, Cancer, Taurus is something called your 11th sign. And so over the next 4 weeks, the new moon energy in this lunar month will put the focus on friends, community, social issues, social causes, your social network, and also hoping and dreaming for the future and looking ahead. The moons this week will go from Taurus to Gemini by Tuesday. Gemini is something called your 12th sign. So Tuesday, Wednesday is a time to go within and to reflect. I think it's Thursday, Friday. It's in Cancer. That's a sense of reboot for the week, a reboot for the month. And then by the weekend, the moon is in Leo. Leo about money and income, material stability and security for you, but also fun, play. That said, let's go back to this Taurus new moon. Actually, let's go back to the solar eclipse of March 29th, because I was having a conversation this weekend with a Cancer rising friend. She's an Aries, but she's also Cancer rising. And what she said to me really encapsulates some of the energy that your sign, Cancer, has been really navigating over the past, even 6 months or more. So this eclipse that we had was in your career sign. And this says that over the next 6 months, you may see changes, new chapters, job changes in your professional life. It could be something different. It could be a call for new responsibilities. But this is what made me think with my conversation with my friends. So the energy of that eclipse had Mars in Cancer. And you are a Cancer or you're Cancer rising. So you received the energy of the eclipse. You received the energy of Mars. And she's my friend. She's in this really sort of I guess, a little bit of a fight or a battle or of wills or a push and pull at work. And it got to a point where she said, I'm going to do something. And when she got pushed back from her boss of all people, she said, try me. And so that sense of like, try me, meaning like, you know, I'm going to do what I want. Try me if you try to like tell me I'm not going to do what I want. That is so much about that Mars energy in Cancer at the time. Now, Mars has moved on to Leo, your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. But this is an energy that's going to take you into the next, at this point, 5 months until that solar eclipse on September 21st. So I wanted to say that in case a lot of stuff is coming up, or deep emotion, or an anger, or you want to fight for something, and maybe even fight for something that you feel is right. Maybe you need to stand up for your value and worth, or maybe even to stand up for making more money or being fairly compensated. It really depends on the person. But this is not you're not going to find yourself as a pushover over the next few months, because Mars, that energy is still with you, even though Mars has moved on. And so when Mars is in our sign or in the sign of our rising, we're typically not a negotiator. We're typically going after what we want. So with that in mind, especially with this Mars-Pluto opposition that we had, and Mars is even taking you into the rest of May, Mars is your career sign. Mars is your sign that talks about your role, your status, power on a worldly level. And it's just been in this intense opposition to Pluto. So you've probably had to really work around some issue around power and control. And there comes a point, it's a very powerful moment in anybody's life when we stand up for ourselves. And so if you've ever had these moments where you finally tell somebody no, or you finally like draw the line, or you set a boundary, or you say, this is what I'm worth, that could be one of the ways in which this energy expresses itself, just as an example. But that said, this new moon talks about the future, and especially with that Mars fight, maybe you're thinking about the type of future you want to create, and to be very clear and concrete about what that type of future is, and especially with Venus, at least as I record this, still in Pisces with Saturn, to make sure that future is in alignment with your values, your truths, and your beliefs. What's after Cancer? Leo, so the sun is your planet, and right now the sun is in Taurus. So for you, Leo, Taurus is your career sign. I know I've heard from a lot of you who are Leo risings, and it doesn't have to not just be career. It can be your public life, your public reputation. It could be the title after your name. It could be responsibility, your worldly life. But typically this part of the chart, Taurus, is career and professional life. That said, to have a Taurus new moon in this part of your chart says your professional life is the area that's receiving the energies of new beginnings over the next 4 weeks. And that will be the stage and setting for where a lot of the action is happening at the moment. Not completely, but it's to look at that area of your life, especially because in 2018, 2019, I know we've talked about it before, Uranus went into Taurus, your career signs. At this point, 6 years later, I've seen Leo risings who have made major career changes. They've made 180s. They're in different industries. Life is not the same as it was at the beginning of 2018. So this new moon is in a space where even though Uranus is still there, it's at the other end of the sign. And it's whatever new beginnings are happening, it may be the fruit of a lot of the bigger changes that have happened over the last 5-6 years. This new moon puts you in a little bit of a sticky point, because there's Mars in Leo, hey, you're Leo, and also Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto over the last 2 years has finally gone into your relationship sign. It's a kind of a bigger conversation to really tease out what this could be, but in general, relationships are in a time of change. It could be capital R relationships, your primary relationships. It could be lower R relationships, how you connect, socialize, and interact with people. We're human beings. We all need to socialize and connect. So there's a bit of what's called this, not a bit, but it's what's called a T-square of energy, where there's a push and pull that's happening, and that's really directing that energy towards your professional life, your public reputation. So this might be a time, especially with Mars and Leo, where you're fighting for something. You're saying no. You're taking notes from Cancer, because Cancer had Mars in Cancer for a while. And you're really going after what you want. And with the new moon in Taurus, they might talk about ambition. The new moon also pointed towards your 8th sign, and this is a time where the new moon is pulling from a lot of the deep emotional and psychic work you've been doing over the last 2 years. You're not the same person 2 years ago. There's been a lot of emotional heavy lifting, but it's also been about power and control and navigating deeper themes about vulnerability, trust, and intimacy. So this new moon is sort of could also be the fruit of that time as well. But this could be also a new moon that talks about money and power and income and material stability and security. We will see, but nevertheless, it's about your professional life, your public life over the next 4 weeks. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is still in Aries. It'll be in Aries until the beginning of our May 10th. So we got another week or so until Mercury goes into Taurus. So right now the energy of your sign is in the 8th. So Mercury is pulling you into the 8th. What is the 8th? The 8th is what I call the 8th room. Imagine a life where nothing happens. Imagine a life where every day is the same. Do you grow? Absolutely not. If you've been to therapy, you've been through the 8th room. The 8th room tests us. It gets us to look at ourselves, and it can sometimes bring tricky or challenging parts of our life to navigate. Not always, but that's to sort of put it into a larger framework. Sometimes we spend a day in the 8th room. Sometimes we spend a year in the 8th room. Well, Mercury has been in and out over the beginning part of this year, but Mercury is beginning to wrap up its time in the 8th room. Conversations are deep. It is a look perhaps under a microscope on something that perhaps is typically hidden. It could be about trust, it could be about power, it could also be about money and assets and financial matters. Again, that begins to change when Mercury goes into Taurus on May 10th. In the meantime, we just had the Taurus new moon, and Taurus for you is something called your 9th sign. The 9th sign is a space where it's hard to put it concretely because it's very subjective depending on who you are. But in general, the 9th is about philosophy, faith, truth, and meaning. For example, we all have a sense of right and wrong. We all have a compass, at least hopefully. We all have a sense of education. Again, hopefully the 9th opens us up to the world and it makes us want more out of life. The 9th is wisdom and knowledge. My joke is, how do we get wisdom and knowledge? We have to go through the 8th. So the 9th is the fruit of the time that we spend in the 8th. So whatever is going on in your life, it's informing what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? A Taurus new moon says that the next 4 weeks have a very strong philosophical overtone. It could be about literally questions of right and wrong. It could be about faith, truth, and meaning on a very day-to-day level. Perhaps you're planning a long-distance trip or foreign travel. You have a desire to see the world. You want to go beyond yourself. For some, it's about higher education or going back to school. And for even some, it's about religion, for example. This Taurus new moon is picking up on a pretty intense opposition between Mars and Pluto. Now, this opposition is not hitting the same types of spaces they are with the other signs, but it is hitting along ideological points, it's hitting along existential points, and especially with Mars in your 12th now, I need to find answers. In the 9th, the answers come from outside of us. In the 12th, the answers come from within. So this might be a time, especially even with Mercury still in Aries, where you need to get quiet. You need to talk to a trusted person, a confidant, a therapist, but you also need to spend some time alone reflecting and to figure out, what do you believe in, what do you stand for, and what do you think is true. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and Venus is wrapping up its time in Pisces as I record this. And for you, since about goodness, probably even last year, there's been this focus on health and wellness. Could be work, it could be projects, for example. But this has been a time for you to, in a way, quote unquote, get your ducks in a row. As Venus prepares to leave, it's going to go back into Aries, but perhaps as before the 30th, so before Wednesday, you need to sort of look back and be like, okay, how are everything in order? How have I focused on my health and wellness? How have I gotten things structured? Is there a project that I'm still tending to? Because Venus won't be here for another year. Now, keep in mind, Saturn is here. Saturn has been here for 2 years. So it's just been a larger time for you to focus on your real world life, and for some Libras, also service and helping other people. Libra's going to start to see some big shifts. Now, Venus going back into Aries, in a way, talks about these bigger shifts, because Aries is your relationship sign. We all have relationships. We have the capital R relationships, the primary people in our life, and we also have the small r relationships, our social connections, our interactions, and even how we socialize and connect with people. You had a solar eclipse in Aries. This was on March 29th. So it says that one of the major stages for change in 2025 for you will be relationships. People will come in and out of your life this year. Either you will begin a relationship, you will end a relationship, or an existing relationship will take on a new chapter, for example. And some of those changes will happen around home and family, your living situation, the past and memories, a sense of putting down roots, because Mars, the energy of the eclipse, pointed towards Cancer. It's not family. Sorry, I got confused with another sign. It points it towards career. It points it towards responsibility. Sorry about that. So with Venus going into Aries on the 30th, it sort of reminds you of this bigger time in your life. And then I wanted to also add, because Saturn will go into Aries at the end of May, May 24th. And it says that June and July and August are a big focal point in relationships. Saturn in your relationship sign, that's a bigger conversation, but just start to take notes. For example, if Aries is your relationship sign, it means Mars is your relationship planet. What came up for you this past week? What is coming up right now within relationships and connections? Because Mars has been in a pretty tight and not so comfortable opposition with Pluto. Pluto is in your 5th sign of children. It's not just children, it's creativity, self-expression, identity, who you are. And Mars is in a space that talks about the future. And so maybe some of the push and pull in relationships are about the future. It's about you. It's about how do you find the balance between your wants, your needs, and the wants and needs of a partner. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and Mars has, I'm personally, as a Scorpio, really exhausted because, and I don't know if it's because or just randomly so, but Mars has been in this opposition to Pluto. So Mars governs you. Mars takes 2 years to go through the zodiac. So over the course of the year, it will pull the energy of your sign, Scorpio, over to different zodiac signs. So Mars, as of April 18th, is in Leo. Leo is your career sign. It's your public life, your public reputation. There's a lot of energy that's happening in the part of the chart that talks about responsibilities, duties, showing up, taking the reins, being a leader, for example. And Mars opposite Pluto might be this time where you need to step into a role, but it also means looking at the past, looking at childhood, looking at something that may be in the way. This is the last opposition between Mars and Pluto for another, for a while. Gosh, I'd have to look at when this is. But this has been in November, this has been January, and now here's the last opposition, April 26th. Pluto is like lead into gold. Pluto is like the forge of a blacksmith. I always think of volcanoes when I think of Pluto like energy. So something needs to change shape and form in your life. You may need to change shape and change form in your life. Perhaps that's the alchemy. Perhaps that's why I'm really tired. For example, this Taurus new moon on a nuts and bolts level says that the next 4 weeks are about relationship. New people could be coming into your life. Could be a time of relationship, a time to focus the energy of your life on relationship. More people may need more of your energy. Could be about ending a relationship. Also, with the energy of that new moon pointed towards Pisces, on some level, it could be about how do you create romance and passion in relationships, or maybe it is about taking yourself and taking your talent seriously within a relationship or with other people. That new moon, again, it really talked about that Mars-Pluto opposition. So it's really putting you in relationships, the role that you want to play in the world, but also something about home and family. It's a bit of a tight energy for the next 4 weeks. You may see things happening in your life. You may see pivot points and shifts, for example. That could be in career, that could be in relationships, that could be home, and could be in your living situation. But Mars, nevertheless, is going to spend all the way until the middle of June in your career sign. So on some level, it's a time to hustle, Scorpio. Sagittarius, Jupiter is your planet, and it is wrapping up its time in Gemini, where it has been since May of 2024. So for you, this has been, on some level, the last year. It's been about relationships. That's not to say that every Sagittarius has been in a relationship or something has changed in a relationship, but it's taken the energy of your life, and it's been either very social, very busy. There's been a lot of movement. Maybe when you look at your life before May of last year, you're like, wow, so much has moved and changed, and people have come in and out of my life over the last 10, 11 months. That will start to shift in June. We're not there yet. Jupiter will change signs on June 9th. That said, we just had a Taurus new moon. That new moon is in what's called your sixth sign. The sixth sign is the operations of your life. It is work, it is projects, it is schedule, or it is organization. It is how you keep everything running in your life, and it's even health and wellness. So over the next 4 weeks, you need to take care of yourself, and you need to take care of your life. This new moon is in a puts a pretty intense energy between Mars and Pluto. So whatever changes that you're making, perhaps they are philosophical in origin, like what do you eat, how do you take care of yourself, maybe something's shifting around your beliefs around that. Keep in mind that you've had 6 years of Uranus in this space. Your physicality, the physicality of your life, the space and operations of your life look very different than they did at the beginning of 2018 and even into 2019. That said, Sagittarius, you're not seeing the energy of this you're not seeing the energy of this new moon in the Mars-Pluto opposition like the other signs, but it is on some level really pushing and pulling at your life. This continues to be a big time for Sagittarius in general. It's about family, about home, and I think I said this last week, but Saturn will start to leave Pisces, which is your fourth sign of home and family, at the end of May. So at the end, just 4 weeks from now. And it's going to start to move into your fifth sign, and it opens up this period that takes you into 2028, where you take yourself and take your talent seriously. In the meantime, is to start to take note of what are the stories around home and family in your living situation that are starting either to come to a head or wrapping up as you go throughout May. Capricorn, Saturn is your planet, and Saturn, 4 weeks from now, Saturn is going to be in Aries, a whole new sign for you. It has been 2 years, 2.5 years almost, give or take, of really focusing on your voice, taking classes, education, looking at options, learning to sort of weigh your choices. And on some level throughout May, maybe you're going to need to make a choice. After all the back and forth and weighing your options, what are you choosing? And sometimes when Saturn goes through the third, we make major choices that really set us up for the coming years. That said, end of May, beginning of June is a major shift point for you. We're not there yet, but it's to start to listen for it, feel for it, and to start to note where the changes are happening in your life. Aries, which represents home and family, roots and foundation, was where we saw a solar eclipse on March 29th. So we know astrologically that home and family, your living situation, your address, is going to be a space where you might see changes over the next 6 weeks, 6 months. And since the energy of the eclipse pointed towards relationships, Mars and Cancer, relationships and connections could also be a point where you see big changes over the next six months. That said, this Taurus new moon is in a fellow earth sign. Taurus is something called your fifth sign. So this could be a new moon for you to get back to who you are, get back to the things that light you up and give you joy, to nourish your life, to find fun, to find pleasure. Perhaps you could use it because it's been a bit of a heavy lift of late. But do keep in mind that this new moon activates the Mars-Pluto opposition. And this Mars-Pluto opposition is in financial spaces in your astrology. It might not necessarily be about money and property and assets for you. It could be about self-worth and value. But if this new moon is about you, your talents, your gifts, and your abilities, or even who you are on a deeper level, then this opposition is really getting into these bigger points about deep emotions around who you are, deep emotions around safety, stability, and security. Do I have enough? It could be literally about money and income. That's really a big focal point for the next 4 weeks. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and 4 weeks from now, Saturn will finally change signs. So it's going to leave Pisces, where it's been since March of 2023. And since Saturn governs you, Saturn is going to move your energy over towards Aries. It hasn't been in Aries since 1996, 7, 8, in the first few months of 1999. Now, Aries for you is something called your third sign. Voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. You're stepping into a period, especially we had the Aries new moon solar eclipse on March 29th, where it's a lot of movement, a lot of education, a lot of writing, a lot of speaking, travel, curiosity, weighing your options, learning new things. And so you might see a lot of movement in your life at the moment. Certainly with Mercury there. But when Saturn gets there, Saturn's a different energy. Now, Saturn does rule you, but Saturn is about making these things real and making them concrete. You need to be authority of what you have to say, what you have to teach, what you have to write. It is to make choices and hopefully to make good choices, but we'll talk more about this as we get closer. That said, the Taurus new moon is in your sign of home and family roots and foundation. It's in the household. It forms, Taurus for you forms the base and foundation of your life. On a very simple level, for some Aquarius risings, you're moving or you're thinking about your home, your living situation, you're putting time and energy into the household. Somebody's moving in or somebody's moving out. You've already had over the last 5-6 years with Uranus here a lot of big changes in this part of your life. So whatever is happening, it could be connected to the larger changes that you've seen over the last 4, 5, and 6 years. This new moon is pointing towards you in a way. It's activating the Mars-Pluto opposition. Mars is in Leo, your relationship sign, and Pluto is in Aquarius. So over the past 2 years, you've been in this monumental shift in your life, Aquarius, because Pluto is now in Aquarius. Whether you're Aquarius Sun or Aquarius Rising, it's as if old life, new life. So you're in the new life. And this new life, it's it could be about new people coming into your life, especially this lunar month. May could be a time where relationships need a lot of attention, both the people in your life, capital R relationships, but also how do you connect and socialize and interact. Typically when Mars is in the sign that's opposite us, like we're a little bit on the defensive. Mars is not the negotiator, and you might have people telling you what they want from you. Maybe you're seeing a lot of change and movement in relationships, but this is also impacting your home environment or even bringing up emotions around belonging and connection and emotional connection. The energy of this eclipse is pointed towards you because, not eclipse, new moon, because Venus is conjunct Saturn and Saturn rules you. It's getting into questions around value and worth, even material stability and security, and even in investments. So it's sort of see how the next 4 weeks are about home and investments and money and property and assets and relationships, but also part of the bigger changes that you're in, Aquarius. Pisces, Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter is in Gemini, and Jupiter continues to take the energy of your sign and to bring it towards the home environment. So you've been in this personal chapter since May of 2024 that's been titled Family and Home. I realize family and home means different things to different people, and I hope that on some level you have an address and you have a home. I hope. And so maybe you've needed to really focus on your living situation or your home environment over the past 10, 11 months. Maybe you've moved, maybe you're thinking about a move, maybe you're just cleaning things out of your house, maybe you're sort of recommitting to where you are, putting down roots and really making sure you're getting your needs met. Easier said than done sometimes. This Taurus new moon, let me take a step back. So Jupiter will change signs on June 9th, so about 5-6 weeks from now. So that will be a time shift for you. So it says the second half of 2025 is different than before. That said, the Taurus new moon, Taurus is your third sign of voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. On a surface level, the next 4 weeks could be about education. It could be about travel. Maybe there's just a lot of movement, curiosity. You're trying new things. This new moon gets into bigger questions about value and worth, and perhaps where you're investing your time in, and even the value and worth of your voice and what you have to say and what you have to communicate. The new moon, especially with the Mars opposite Pluto, it's not hitting you like it is the other signs, but it may be bringing up some deeper emotional themes. You've got Pluto in your 12th sign of your spirituality and release and letting go, and you have Mars in your 6th sign of health and wellness, but also operations and organization. And so this could be about you, but this could also be about bigger existential questions. What do I believe in? What do I stand for? And how do I want to participate? And how do I want to help? And how do I want to be of service? But don't forget, especially with Jupiter still in your 4th, to make sure that you are being supported. You are getting your needs met, because Pisces by its nature, wants to help. It wants to heal, but you can't help anybody if you're not getting your needs met first. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week, April 28th through May 4th of 2025. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. You can book a consultation with me. I know some of you are my clients, and join me for that free webinar next week to give you this introduction to energetic sciences that I also teach. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.